Hi, I'm Nergish Wadia-Austin, and I am a business management consultant and trainer to the hair, beauty, wellness, spa, male grooming, and nail industries. I teach leaders of salons, spas, and barbershops how to manage their business. I teach them leadership skills, how to increase customer spend, and pretty much any aspect of running their businesses, including reducing expenses, etc. I also teach salon professionals how to run their columns as a business. My contact details appear at the end of each video. So today's conversation is with the great Millie Kendall. She is the CEO of the British Beauty Council, and she is the new business development director for Brandstand, a PR agency of hers. So all that remains to be said is, hello, Millie, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Millie, let's just dive into a few questions because I'm sure the audience that I have is desperate to hear from you. Could you give us 3 objectives of the British Beauty Council, as you're the CEO of it?
Yes, so the British Beauty Council was set up in 2018. I mean, it was mainly set up to liaise with government,
Right.
in essence, because there was we have no sort of government representation as an industry. We developed the strategy around 3 pillars. So the first pillar is reputation. So it's about raising the reputation of the beauty industry. There are a number of sort of tactics and strategies that we use within reputation. One was defining the industry. One was valuing the industry. Another is sort of British Beauty Week, celebrating the beauty industry. And then within reputation, we're looking at diversity and inclusivity, mental health and well-being, etc. So things that we think are challenging to our reputation, that we want to have conversations and do research about in order to sort of build on what we feel is we feel that we have a good reputation, but we feel that we need to grow that with government.
Okay, so that would
because we've been sort of sidelined. So reputation is one of those areas. The next is education, and then we also have innovation. And within those 2 pillars, there are different sort of areas we're looking at. So education, it would be promoting careers to 13 to 16-year-olds, and innovation, we're looking at sustainability.
Okay, so can we talk about education there?
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing that? How is that happening?
So we've, to be honest with you, the education piece has slightly changed. So so if I start at the beginning in 2018, the first thing we did was define the industry. Then we spent the next 6 months, from January 2019 to July, 7 months, valuing the industry. And during that time, while we were having the valuation done, I started to build the roadmap, and we had think tanks with patrons and advisory board members, experts in the industry. We got everyone together and we started to look at what should we be doing. So there are already a number of industry bodies. So we wanted to make sure that we weren't crossing over what other industry bodies were doing. That would be insane and waste of my time.
Yeah.
And we wanted to support other industry groups where possible, and sort of carve out what our responsibility should be. So it's almost like looking at what your role and responsibility is, what your roles and responsibility are. So with education, it became very apparent to me that there were a lot of organisations within further education. So hair, beauty, multidisciplinary, nails, etc.
Sure.
And in the valuation that we had done in 2018, 65,000 people took an MVQ level 2 or 3 across hair, beauty, nails, makeup as well. So it's quite a big area. 65,000 people is a lot of people, but there are many, many organizations that look after that. So we sort of thought, well, what we'll do is we won't enter into that arena, because that's just a minefield and there are tons of people already working in that area. So we looked at promoting careers to 13 to 16-year-olds, and we also are looking at higher education courses. So we appointed an education pillar president. We did some work on what's available in the UK. You might find there's a couple of cosmetic science courses. There are maybe 1 or 2 fashion communications courses that have now become beauty communications or beauty promotions, they call it. Our education pillar president wrote one of those. But you can't really do beauty buying, beauty merchandising, beauty business. You can't get a PhD in beauty, you know. So we looked at those sort of two ends: the promotion side, the ad campaign, and then the sort of the higher education end, because that was something that we knew that we could start to work and develop. And obviously, because of COVID, the sort of outreach to the 13 to 16-year-olds, because the school's shutting completely,
of course,
closed. So we haven't done any of that.
Got it.
And ironically, there is some work still being done on the higher education side. But ironically, what happened is that back in November of 2019, so I have to remember all my dates, we held a think tank about diversity and inclusivity. And one of the things that came up, which I'd always kind of had in the back of my head, but we hadn't really written it in the roadmap. One of the things that came up was a lack of diversity in further education courses. So just because I'm a busybody, I got in touch with as many people as I could, started to track who signs off on the courses. So you can't really do, so for example, curly hair or afro hair is not mandatory, it's not compulsory in hairdressing courses, which it should be.
Ridiculous, yes.
And also there's a problem with skin as well. But anyway, what happened was, discovered that there was a problem, kind of always knew anyway, but you know, it was starting to become very apparent that there is a problem in terms of it being compulsory. So there are add-ons, but you know, it's just a hair texture. You should learn all of it. And you have to do theory in that hair texture, but there's no practical work being done. So during COVID, one of the things that we've done is actually we're building a task force to work with the people that write the curriculum. So whilst that was sort of off limits in education, we seem to have sort of
broken that barrier
into it. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sort of step on people's toes, and there are amazing people working in this sector, but it really does help to have some influential names pushing the demand for this type of curriculum. And also I think you have to present changes to curriculum or new curriculum, and then it has to go through a sort of testing phase, and the more people that get involved, back it. Exactly. So, you know, what we try to do in all of these things, if we discover that there's something that we can add, we will step in and add as much as we can.
Superb. So now everyone knows where to go to and whose door to knock on when something isn't quite fair.
I mean, you know, I knew it because Diana, my assistant, who I've worked with for years, and she used to work for us, and she used to manage one of my beauty mart shops, and she's now in charge of special events. And she went to a university to study hair and makeup, and she's mixed race, and she did not learn how to work with hair like her own hair, and
it's ridiculous.
It's quite devastating, and it's quite and she's always touched on that she didn't have the opportunity to work on people that look like her.
Millie, I know because I'm a hairdresser at Vidal Sassoon, and I started out in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, basically, there wasn't a very large Afro-Caribbean population.
Yes.
And I was faced with someone coming in with that hair texture type, and I was asked to cut hair. And I remember from my own experience that I went straight back to the Sassoon Academy. I'm talking over 40 years ago, because I'm old, Millie. And I have to tell you, I actually demanded to learn how to do it, because I just said, this is absurd. We're going to come across every type of texture of hair.
But you see, that's really important, because kids that are going through this training should demand it. They should demand it. I have heard, well, you know, in our little village, there, you know, it's all very much, people have the same hair texture. Well, they're not going to stay in the village forever.
Exactly.
You know, they're not, you know. I mean, and you have to make a change. You have to start somewhere.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important for our sector to start there. I think that what we don't want to do is be tokenistic and not be thoughtful about where this needs to go. And I think we need to start at the beginning and say, look, hey, education is critical.
Perfect.
Both in terms of educating people at normal school and within our, further education. I mean, it's just, it's absurd to me. It's absurd to me.
So from a business perspective, I'll tell you where we come across these issues. It's not just that we don't learn all textures, but the thing that really bugs me, because I teach around the world and I teach how to run a profitable business. That's my specialty. And the thing that gets me is hairdressers come in and say, oh, I don't do long hair. I don't do gents barbering. I don't do scissor over combing. You just think, my God, you're a hairdresser. It's the equivalent.
Well, there's a commercial imperative to be well-rounded. I had somebody say to me, a woman that I know that used to work for me, she's now head of, she has some commercial role in a magazine. I can't remember what her actual title was. She's got short hair. So she went to a barber shop and the barber said to her, you can't come back again because we really only do men's hair. I mean, it's just, okay, fine. I mean, it's slightly absurd, isn't it?
Of course it is. So here's a topic that I want to bring up, because I know that you're very kind and generous with your time. I know that you share your knowledge firsthand, because that's exactly how I met you. I was setting up a standard at the time, and I have to say, I met you and Anna Marie Soloway via Andrea Fullerton, if you recall.
Yeah.
And that's how you guys got together with me. And I have to say, the help that you guys gave me, I will for eternity remain grateful. So from that, and your insight into the customer's point of view of what good service looks like was, we were so in sync. It was like I was hearing from someone that was just echoing what I was talking about for years. But I want from the horse's mouth now, 3 things that that salon owners, both in hair and beauty and nails, spa, don't do. They just don't go that extra. I want you to tell them how to go the extra mile, because you had put it so eloquently to me over now. I think it was around 2010, 2011 when
when I first moved back from LA. So, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I grew up in America, and so everything is have a nice day. My dad's got
customer comes into the salon.
So,
what do we not do that we should be doing?
Do you know what? I often have walked into a business and I've stood there like a complete idiot and nobody said a word to me.
Got it. So
I cannot stand that. I can't stand it when I walk into the local chemist. I can't stand it when I walk into anywhere. If anyone walks through your door, the first thing you do is acknowledge them.
Absolutely.
And actually, that was always something that I used in retail as well, because if you acknowledge someone, they're less likely to steal something from you because they know that you've seen them. So I used to use that quite a lot. But I find that in this country just astounding that I can be completely ignored. I literally walk. There's a whole waiting system outside my local pharmacy, my local chemist. So there's only 2 people in there. I mean, it's not a stretch to say hello to one of us. And so, that to me, I find astounding. I mean, I don't go anywhere where that happens because I go and see friends. So, very often.
So another couple of things that you might want to bring up?
I don't know. I feel like there's often, one of the things that drives me nuts in a hair salon is I have to put a gown on before I talk to a hairdresser. I can't stand that.
Yes.
Talk to me before, see what I look like in my normal clothes. And if I could get away with not wearing a gown, I would not wear a gown. I find them a bit annoying. I find sometimes you walk into a business and their sort of automated process they just use on everyone. And I just find that sometimes it's not bespoke enough for me.
Got it.
I'd be really happy. Do I care if I get hair on my clothes? I don't. I grew up in a salon. It doesn't really bother me. But I do feel that the consultation sometimes is missing.
Yes.
And I just think that it doesn't necessarily have to take that long.
Agreed completely.
And nowadays, I'm mortified that this guy who lives in my building said that he went to the barbers across the road and they didn't disinfect the seat.
Right.
Before he sat down, and I said to him, no, they have to do that.
They have to do it.
So nowadays, I walked past 7 hair salons in my village on Saturday, and only one of them was wearing the visor. And people have to wear visors.
That's kind of shocking to me.
And disinfect, just alcohol, just a bit of alcohol solution. You know, it's not difficult. And I think just sort of general sanitization, really, cleanliness.
Correct.
I don't want to walk into a salon and see hair trapped in the corner around the skirting board. I know that sounds really disgusting.
No, it is. No, but it's absolutely just what the customer sees, though. And I think
part of the reputational crisis that we sort of find ourselves in is obviously throughout COVID, we've been delayed in opening. So that's a challenge for us. But equally, we're not regulated. So therefore, there's a real sort of polar opposite between the good salons and maybe not so good salons. So, and it can be from like filth to spectacular. And so I would just like to see it be a bit more even, you know, take a bit of pride in your environment.
Fantastic. Great words. Right. So I'll move along now to, we've been through this horrifying crisis, and I think it's not going away anytime soon.
It's going to be around for a long time,
for sure. So what are the few things that we actually have to accept? You've already covered it. You know, stop being shoddy with the hygiene levels. It's not going to do your business any favors. That's for certain. So any other couple of things that you might want to mention?
Well, I've always said that I think that our sector, for our industry, for the most part, will adopt the PPE and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm horrified that people aren't wearing visors, but actually the government guidelines are 42 pages, not easy to read. I mean, I swear if they did a video, it would be much easier.
Yes.
But the fact is that the one compulsory item is the visor. So let's wear that and let's just be done with it. Wear it. If you can wear a mask and a visor together, brilliant. Just as much as you can do is more important. The struggle is, and I always thought, was not so much the PPE, would be the scheduling of appointments. We are so used to working in a certain way that the whole sort of split staff, scheduling of appointments, the gaps in between. I think we really need to learn to adapt to that a little bit.
I think at the top
end, look at whether that makes us profitable or not, or if we can still be profitable.
But there are many ways. I mean, top salons in Scotland, basically, there's one group basically that has decided to announce that we are going to, in fact, put in a charge for as long as we're using PPE and as long as COVID carries on, we're putting on an extra charge because it is costing us and it's got to come from somewhere.
Well, so here's the thing with that. So before the government guidelines were launched, we wrote in partnership with a lot of different organisations suggested guidelines, and in the suggested guidelines I said in every section, that's retail, hair, nails, etc., increase your prices, because we're not expensive anyway. I don't think we're expensive. So and I think a lot of people in hair have done that. They've added on this surcharge to cover the cost of PPE, and we will push for that VAT, the 5% VAT as well, as much as possible, because I think we need that really, just to make up for the added cost of PPE. However, that might work in hair, because if you're paying £135 or something for a highlights, that extra 5 or 10 quid, it's not a big deal. But when you're getting a manicure,
and you're an eyebrow shape, absolutely agreed.
So I think we have to look at the difference in services.
Got it. Okay,
and that's a challenge. But equally, I think we need to give it to October, because we've got an opportunity with the sort of reduced flexible furlough. But I think we need to give it to October and then kind of see how the business stacks up.
Got it.
Because I've noticed a lot of chain restaurants haven't opened, and I would imagine that's because it's cheaper for them to stay on full furlough.
Yes, full furlough, and of course their operating takeaway business, which is now, you know, they've got that supplementary way of being able to operate.
It might be. So we did a survey with our members, and we had quite a good response, but the respondents have said that they weren't considering going mobile. I think that there might be some businesses that go mobile.
Yes, most definitely they are.
Particularly if they've got small space, high rents.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that. So then going on to what I think absolutely everyone is concerned about, and I think you've probably been at the front end of it most of all, this business about the sort of lack of really understanding that we're not playing around with business as a hobby, that we are actually contributing quite significantly to the GDP of this country. And I think it's that negative sort of way of speaking about us that one gets on my nerves, but also I think it impacts young people and their parents. They don't let them go into the industry. They feel it will not be a sector that will be lucrative enough for.
Yeah, it's not seen as a sort of serious job, but that's been
it's been forever.
Forever. So since the 70s, my dad left the UK in 1979 and moved to America, and he's a hairdresser. And I think a lot of that was to do with the sort of lack of respect and sort of, I don't think he wanted his children to grow up seeing him be ignored by his clients in the street. I mean, things have changed a little bit.
Yes.
But not enough. Certainly not enough. I mean, when we first went to government in 2018 and we walked in the door, it was very much around, we were going there to talk to the culture minister about an industry that we knew was quite a buoyant, exciting industry. And when we walked through the door, we sat down at Portcullis House and we were literally told that we weren't even seen as a sort of bona fide industry. It was maybe a bit fractured, and a little bit of us was looked after by the Department of Education, some in health, and some in fashion, but we weren't recognised as an industry.
Can you see the steam coming out of my ears at this stage?
No, it's really it was very distressing. I came out like a dog with a bone. I was like, this is very irritating to me, and because I've worked across a lot of different areas, so I worked in hairdressing, worked in beauty, had a makeup brand, owned a PR agency. To me, it's all the same industry. It's not one bit of,
it is. I agree.
I don't see hair being separated from beauty. Well, particularly now that a lot of the hair salons have become hair and beauty salons.
Correct.
So the industry is continually merging together and becoming closer. Retail brands are becoming wholesale brands, and wholesale brands are becoming retail brands, and everything's sort of merging. And the internet has changed how we perceive the beauty industry. We book things online. The reviews and the comments, and I don't know. It's like it just all the booking platforms that do both hair and beauty. Everything's come together, and it felt to me that it was a logical thing to value that, because that then turned out to be obviously £28.4 billion, which I couldn't have seen that. I mean, I thought it would be about 20.
Wow.
I really thought it would be about 20. I
wouldn't have thought it was that high. And I'm in the industry.
Yeah. So. No, I would have thought I would have thought it was somewhere between 8 to 9 billion
Correct.
in services and 8 to 9 billion for the whole of product. But actually, you've got personal care and hygiene, and then you've got personal enhancement, which is like makeup, and then you've got services. So services is around 9 billion. So I think we were all kind of slightly correct in the services area.
Correct. Yeah.
But the rest of it, we just hadn't.
It's phenomenal.
I mean, you think about the amount of amazing hairdressers that have brands that sell in boots.
Correct. Absolutely.
You can't separate us. You can't separate everything.
So can I ask you something? You've mentioned that your journey has been varied. Could you give us a quick idea of what your career path has been so far?
And it's been a mess.
Yeah, well, you know what? You've ended up, you also run a PR agency, Brandstand, from what I understand. So tell us a little bit about how you got here, please.
Yeah, so my dad's a hairdresser, and I left school when I was around. So I started working at Michael John actually on Saturdays, washing hair.
Right.
My dad was a stylist there, and so I washed hair on a Saturday. I was about 13, but those were the days when you could work at 13.
Correct.
Or maybe even if you couldn't, my dad made me work at 13. And I really loved the customer interaction. I really loved the environment. I loved the fact I could wear what I wanted. And I got really excited to go in. I loved the staff room and all that kind of stuff. but when I was about 15, I was put on a youth training scheme with Tony and Guy.
Oh, I remember that.
And I went to go work in on Davis Street, and they had just opened Sloane Square, and I did the youth training scheme, and then I moved to New York and ended up working for Bumble and Bumble as an assistant. Right. I was basically the longest serving assistant in history. I mean, if you think about, I started at 13 and I don't think I finished until I was about 19 or 20.
Right.
So I'm really good at washing hair.
Got it. I'm booking in for shampoo shortly.
I never had the skills to cut it. I just never had those skills. And whilst I loved colour, I don't think I had the patience for it. So I neither had the patience nor the skill. So I ended up really falling in love with this sort of little makeup area that Bumble and Bumble had. And they had a little bit of William Tuttle, a little bit of Il Makiage, and they had a few little makeup products, including MAC, which was only sold in salons back then. So this is like way before Lauder bought them. And I just really loved the makeup because I loved the colour, but I loved the sort of immediacy of it and the fact that it didn't take long. And also, I've never been very good with geometry.
Right.
So the whole concept of hair cutting is quite geometric, and I don't understand. But I'm very good with algebra, and I'm also very good with colour. So I sort of felt that the makeup thing I felt more akin with. Anyway, I lost my job at Bumble and Bumble. I often say that Michael Gordon says he fired me, but I still claim I quit. And my dad got me a job at a very small boutique that had opened in LA called Shuemura, and it just launched. And his ex-receptionist was the manager there, and she hired me, and I came into work on Sundays, and then she quit, and I took her job.
Right.
And I became manager, and then obviously the brand expanded, and I went to Japan, and then they asked me to come to London, so I launched it here in Harvey Nicks, and then just went all over Europe to launch it with them, and I just loved it. And then one of my clients who used to come into the Shuemura boutique in London, her husband wanted to bring Aveda to the UK and be the distributor, and Horst Reckelbacker knew my dad. So Horst knew my dad, and Horst insisted that I be a key person in the distribution agreement, because he wanted me to be involved, and I think he just wanted somebody familiar who's quite
to oversee it,
you know, and it was more for the sort of marketing PR side of it. So I got involved in that, and in order to do that, I had to quit my job at Shu. But I retained them as a client. So I set up my own business. And from that moment on, really, I had my own business. And then took on loads of other clients, L'Occitane, Tweezerman, launched loads of brands, really. And then about 1994-5, I worked with Nikki Kinnaird on the beauty part of Space NK. So Space NK was originally a fashion boutique.
Right.
And I had the beauty section. And then, so I did that in 93. And then around 94, 95, I got a call from Boots, and they wanted to talk to the distributor about bringing Aveda into Boots. And I just said, that's not going to happen. But we took the meeting anyway. And that's where the idea of Ruby and Millie came about, that we would develop a makeup range with Boots backing that would look like it was our brand, but it would be backed by about £7 million worth of investment, which was huge back then.
What a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, it was a really good opportunity, yeah. And then we did that. And then Ruby and I just always said that when the creativity wasn't coming from us, that we would walk away.
Sure.
So we stopped doing that in 2009. I think we quit 2009. Then we had a 6-month non-compete. And then I started work on Beauty Mart. So I had bumped into a friend of mine who was the beauty director at Vogue, and she just left Vogue, and we decided to open a shop with all our favourite things in it. And that still exists online, Beauty Mart, but I don't do anything on that anymore just because I haven't got the time. But throughout all of this time, I've always had a sort of small PR agency. I guess just because I like products. I met you through Andrea Fullerton. You know, I've always loved that sort of.
I think you've always been quite
side.
natural at it, honestly, because
yeah.
And it's quite instinctive with you. Networking is instinctive for you. Promoting something is instinctive. When you like it, Millie, you're a force to be reckoned with, is all I can say.
Well, and also the thing is that I can kind of see, the sort of USP in a lot of things. So I can walk into a shop, or I can pick up, I don't know, a product and immediately say, I know what that is. That is, you know, I know how to sell that. I think I'm just really a salesperson.
Yeah, but I
mean, PR is glorified sales, isn't it? At the end of the day,
most definitely. Just showing people the benefit of it is really what PR is.
Which in a way kind of lends itself to the sort of government side, which maybe it's not quite. The bit that I enjoy about the job that I'm doing with the British Beauty Council is the policy affairs, strangely.
Yes.
Organising the website and managing social media.
But it is PR of our industry. That's really what you're doing.
Yeah. It is the PR of the industry, exactly.
So I would say to you, I'd like to complete this conversation in this way, because I do believe that going forward, every financial institution has predicted a slowdown because of job losses, through people understanding that they don't need as many people since they've learned from COVID that they can run on much more of a skeleton team. Then, of course, there is this thing called Brexit approaching us, and it looks like it's going to be a no deal. Again,
well, they had till the end of June, didn't they, to come up with a deal?
Honestly, there would not be. I'll be very upfront and honest. There will not be a civilized word coming out of my mouth to do with that. So we'll skate over that. But what we will say is that going forward, for example, what I have encountered, and I think I have to put it to you as CEO of the British Beauty Council, and let me put this out there because I know that's the next discussion coming up in the industry. So where there are towns and cities where there is a key employer in that town. And that key employer then, because of Brexit, has to relocate somewhere in Europe. That town is going to lose multiples of jobs. It is going to lose its key employer. And in some cases, in one of the towns, there is discussion of it being between 3,000 and 5,000 people in one area that will lose their jobs. So, of course, naturally, those businesses in those areas are going to have to cope with that. And that's what's coming at us next. And so it may not, we might be in a lucky area where no one's relocating to Europe, and then it won't affect us in that area. But if you have a small business in a particular area that is in fact highly affected,
reliant on that local custom,
I want the British Beauty Council to actually, maybe because you've got the ear of the government, maybe start to say, what exactly are you going to do to help these small businesses?
I have a meeting with them actually on Friday, but it's more about free trade agreements. I mean, look, I think if you look at central London, and I expect this is happening at cities all over the country, if you look at central London and how desolate it is, based on what we've just been through or what we're going through with COVID, people aren't travelling into town. So people aren't taking public transport. And also a lot of office workers have decided they can work from home. So they're not coming into town. Therefore, the salons, the shops, the cafes, nothing is operating to the degree it could be. Way back in the beginning of this, I said that I would expect to see our industry, the hair and beauty industry, shrink by around 30%.
Right.
I think that's pretty fair. I mean, I actually think, if anything, I probably underestimated it, but I think that's probably going to end up being pretty accurate. If Boots can make 7% redundancies, not looking good for micro businesses, is it?
Of course it is.
So I think one of the things that I think we've learned during this time is that a lot of our small businesses are run on debt. A lot of them don't have the cash flow.
Of course.
I think that a lot of them are operating on a very thin thread, and they probably need to look at, running their businesses in a more sustainable way. And I think about sustainability a lot, and I do believe profitability is sustainability.
Of course.
And I think that we need to look at a more sustainable approach to running our businesses. And it might be mobiles is the way forward. It might be, you know, giving up those premises. You know, it's a shame that our high street will change because there are a lot of beauty businesses on our high street, but that might be the change that we see. There is, as far as I'm aware, there's no deal. I've got meetings to talk about free trade agreements with Europe, US, Asia on Friday. I mean, there's literally an agenda about 2 miles long. Those calls tend to be around 2.5 hours. So that will be quite a lot of work. We do quite a bit of work with the Department for International Trade. And the other thing I'm talking to them about is immigration. And we are looking at, alongside the Creative Industries Federation, how we can work with government on this 70-point rule, because we might find that our hair and beauty businesses rely on...
They won't make it. I'm telling you, with that, no, they won't make it.
No, not in the current state.
Yes, not
in the current state. But equally, if we can get... So there's a number of issues there. Number one, we won't make the 70 points if we're trying to recruit people from Europe. And number two, we've got... because obviously the salaries and the skills, but this is an opportunity to talk to government about our industry being highly skilled.
Yes.
And not where it's deemed now.
Yes.
It's not highly skilled.
Well, I have to say you have a mammoth task in front of you, and I wish you and your team very well. But we are going to have to bring this up, because I know that once we adjust to our new normal after COVID, what we've got approaching us December is...
It's like I said, you know, it's a double whammy.
Yes.
I mean, we are going to be hit from every which way. I mean, we knew there was going to be some sort of reduction in our industry, you know, some challenges with Brexit. Who knew that we were about to face COVID? I said this the other day. I was like, when I set this up, who could have predicted that this would have been the biggest challenge of the first, you know, year and a half of the British Beauty Council? But, you know, for a tiny team, hats off to my team, we've weathered the storm on our end. I mean, we have got a long way to go. Need to get those beauty salons open.
Fully opened, yes.
Yes, they need to be fully opened. I mean, it is ridiculous that you can do a beard trim and you can't do an eyebrow.
Listen, I mean, it just makes no sense, frankly. And I am all for returning safely. Millie, that has to be the first priority, both for us and for consumers. But the way it has randomly been, it's almost like someone remembers something and then they get hit by us, and then they make a decision that it's just not thought through.
It's not thought through, and the challenge is that. For example, masks now are going to be mandated from July 24th. God knows why so late, but anyway, okay, fair enough. Does that mean in beauty salons as well?
I imagine so, yes. But
probably not. They say retail. Are we retail or are we not retail? We're non-essential retail. Do you think that anyone will get up this afternoon when they make the announcement and say also in nail salons and beauty salons? I mean, they call us, they refer to it as nail parlors, like something from the 1950s.
Oh, don't.
So yeah, it's very difficult. And the other problem is for the industry organisations is that we end up like fighting fires.
Yes.
So this announcement, where are we? Tuesday.
Yeah.
This will be. I'll have 2 days of messages asking about this, because they won't make it clear, and that's really uncool. You know.
Well. I mean, for me, because I teach great leadership practice, you have no idea what
this is not. This is the polar opposite.
Of course, yes. Yeah. It's a quick lesson in how not to.
Totally.
I will say to you, thank you, Millie Kendall, for giving me your valuable time.
Thank you, Nergish. So nice to see you.
Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and you'll get to see every conversation with every expert.